You know exactly what you need to do, maybe for months or even longer. You've read books, you have frameworks, you've probably had this conversation in your head over 100 times. And there's still this decision or this move that you've been putting off. And yet with all these things, nothing moves. You're not lazy, you're probably not undisciplined, you're probably one of the sharpest people in the room. You can see problems before they happen. You've built teams, led businesses, and you've made real decisions under pressure. So why can't you decide? A simple decision, like sending an email, following up, choosing a course of action. All of these things feel like you're trudging through concrete. I'm going to be direct because you don't need more theories. It's not an intelligence problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's not even a mindset problem. What you are experiencing is your nervous system running a survival program. And that program is hijacking your ability to lead, choose, and act. And until you understand that there's a level that goes deeper than information, the productivity hacks, the change up of your routine, the framing of your day, no motivational video, no book, no podcast is going to touch that space. So that's exactly what we are getting into today. The conventional advice for this problem is everywhere. You're a perfectionist. You're an overachiever. You overthink. Just take action. Done is better than perfect. Use the 80-20 rule. Stop waiting for the right moment and act. This isn't inherently wrong. It's just the person that is receiving this advice isn't taking it in. And it's because you already know all of it. You've probably said it yourself 1,000 times. You've said it to your team hundreds of times. But again, knowing the advice and being able to act on it are two very different things. And that gap between knowing and doing isn't a knowledge gap, isn't a willpower gap, it's a capacity gap. Think about the men and women that I work with, founders, leaders, high-performing parents. These are not people who lack information. They have more frameworks, books, have listened to more podcasts than most. They've done therapy, they've done courses, and they know their patterns fairly well, but they are still stuck. And it's not because they haven't found the right answer yet, it's because the system that's supposed to act with this information isn't working efficiently. It's in survival mode. Your nervous system doesn't care how smart you are. It doesn't care how many podcasts you listen to, how many books on strategy that you have read, nor how many times you've attended therapy. It ends up overriding everything. Rational thinking, long-term planning, creative strategy, all out the window. And then what you've got left is a brilliant mind, all this potential in a human being that just has a dysregulated engine. And so they're unable to show up to their full potential. Your nervous system has one primary job, and that is to keep you alive. And it does this through a set of automatic responses. Ancient, hardwired responses that are incredibly fast and efficient. You may have heard of fight or flight, but there's another two, freeze and fawn. So in total, you've got fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses. And here's what none of the productivity content tells you about these responses. They don't look the way that you expect. Fight doesn't always look like aggression. For a high performer, that is irritability that can come through as wanting to control things, micromanaging. For instance, micromanaging a team, even though you trust the team, your nervous system is looking for something that it can grip onto to feel safe. That control creates a false sense of safety. Then take flight for an instance. It doesn't mean that you have to run away to be in flight mode. Flight for a high performer is overworking, being distracted, filling up every hour so you don't have to feel the discomfort of what you've been avoiding. And it looks like staying busy as a way of staying numb. Freeze. Well, it doesn't look like you're just lying there on the floor staring up at the sky. As a high performer, freeze looks like a full calendar, but there is zero momentum. It also looks like knowing exactly the steps you need to take, you know what to do, but you're not doing it. It can also look like staring at an email draft for 40 minutes, but still not sending it. You might be present in the room, but you're absent from your life. You don't feel anything. You're not there. And fawn is a bit of a tricky one. It's not one that people share often. Fawn looks like compulsory responsibility, over accommodating, saying yes when everything in you wants to say no. Essentially leading from people pleasing instead of your values and your principles. And boundaries that don't exist, where you're just pouring yourself into everyone else until you run on empty. Does that sound familiar? Because most of the high-performing leaders that I work with cycle through all 4 of those responses on any given day. And they have no idea why they are experiencing what they're experiencing. And it's not a character flaw or a leadership failure or that something is fundamentally broken within them. And a nervous system in survival mode cannot access vital parts of the brain to make good and clear decisions. It cannot hold nuance. It cannot think long term. It cannot tolerate uncertainty without converting it to the worst case scenario. Which brings us to the real reason why intelligence makes this worse. A regulated nervous system uses intelligence as a tool. A dysregulated nervous system uses intelligence as a weapon. Think about it logically. A sharp mind is presented with a survival threat. It's first going to make a case, a thorough, logical, multi-layered case that's going to build up a reason around why this is not going to work, why there are too many variables, why the risk does not outweigh the reward, why you may need a little more information before you can move. And the smarter you are, the better your excuses. And it's funny, what's essentially happened is your nervous system has outsourced the rationale to your intellect. And the intellect has done a stellar job at making a case, expressing why you can't do X, Y, and Z. And you believe it. And so you end up self-sabotaging yourself. And you end up staying exactly where you are. And this is why most high performers often feel paralyzed. There's this compelling narrative that validates that you're stuck in the correct position, but you can feel it in your being that this is not true. And then you hear these stories of people that don't overthink it and they just take action. And so you find a person who doesn't overthink and just takes action, launches the imperfect business and is willing to refine that, whilst the person who overthinks finds themselves refining and finding more facts and trying to make sense of things and wait for the perfect time, which never comes. Intelligence without regulation produces paralysis and avoidance. You'll probably avoid working out, you'll probably avoid taking action on your business, you'll probably avoid certain hard conversations with your partner, you're probably avoiding hard conversations with yourself. All these things add up because you have built logical arguments that correlates with the position that you're in. And so until you've taken a moment to actually change the system underneath that, your thinking will always find a way to keep you safe. So let me name 3 patterns specifically, not to diagnose you, so you can actually understand what's running the show. So pattern 1 is essentially micromanagement disguised as standards. So you tell yourself you've got these high standards, you care so much about quality, people around you just don't seem to get it, and some of that may be true. But micromanagement in a high performer specifically is almost always a control response under threat. It is a control response under threat. So when your nervous system doesn't feel safe, it narrows, it grips, it needs to oversee everything, because the alternative is you're having to trust, you might have to delegate and let go. So it feels genuinely dangerous on a psychological level, even if it's entirely rational or on a strategic level. And look, this is how leaders lose their best people, not because they're bad leaders, but because their nervous system is essentially running the leadership and not them. So people feel like you don't trust them. We then move to pattern number 2, the momentum collapse. So essentially what happens here is you say yes to everything. There's this massive burst of energy. It's this fight state. You build momentum. You believe this time is going to be different. And then somewhere around a week or 4, this massive collapse comes. There's exhaustion. There is this resentment, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you. There's this quiet shutdown that nobody on your team can quite explain, but they've seen it before, and it happens over and over again. And this is not necessarily a discipline problem. This is a fight to free cycle that you're currently in. And it will keep repeating until the underlying nervous system pattern shifts. So this is not another means or reason for you to find a better productivity system. It's actually got nothing to do with that. So this here is the need that most people try to meet and fix with all these productivity hacks. And maybe it helps to a degree, but if you don't actually understand the pattern that you're living and repeating time and time again, you're just going to experience the same thing again. Now we move into pattern number 3, the safe harbor. So it's this endless research without execution. So you consume more content about the thing than almost anyone. You understand the theory better than people who are actually doing it. You've got detailed notes, you have plans, you even have a clear vision. But that launch doesn't come. And because learning is safe, learning is controlled, learning doesn't expose yourself or expose you to judgment, to yourself, to other people, to failure, or to the terrifying possibility that you might try your hardest and still fall short. So you actually have to go live it. This is flight disguised as productivity, and it's one of the most insidious patterns that I've seen in high performers, I've seen in leaders, I've seen in founders. And it all looks like preparation. It looks like you've got all the skills, but essentially it's protection. And if you recognize yourself as any one of those, or any one of these 3, this is not something to be ashamed of. It's just a starting point. It is just allowing you to profile yourself and see, oh, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm living, this is what I'm doing. So now that we've gone into all of that, what do we actually do with this? Not another morning routine or journaling prompt or mirror work session. The answer is prioritizing regulation before strategy. You cannot think your way out of survival state. That is another motivational strategy. It's a psychological fact. When the nervous system is having a threat response, the prefrontal cortex, the part of long-term planning, nuanced decision-making, creative strategy, well, that function is inhibited. So basically, you're not running the hardware needed for you to make the best decisions that you desire, which then filters this down really simply. The first move is not the plan. The first move is the person. So what does this look like in practice? So it looks like recognizing without judgment which state you've been trying to lead from. So taking a moment, pausing, and checking in. Before the plan, before the big strategic meeting, before the big decision, checking in, what state am I in? It also looks like being able to build capacity. So that means you being okay with uncertainty, being able to sit in that space of discomfort of the unknown. So essentially you move from this reactive response to life to a lived response to life, where you're able to assimilate information, take a breath, and make a genuinely good decision. You've checked in with your gut. You've checked in from where you're making your decision from. And we touched on this, but It's being able to trust your own internal system, your intuition, your gut. Because I can tell you now that your system is so accustomed to logic and pressure and performance that that inner voice, that part of you, tends to be drowned out more often than not. And that slowness, that move away from reactivity, allows you to settle into that space of knowing. This is the real work. This is not intellectualizing the work. It's the kind that changes the way you feel within the room, how you hold a conversation, how you respond within your business, how you go from dissociation and shutting down with your partner to actually sitting there and being able to have a conversation and to sit within that discomfort and not avoid it. It's being able to not dismiss your kids because you're busy. It is something that is felt and seen and ripples in all areas of your life. When you move from this reactive to responsive, responsible approach, when you've built that capacity and you function from that space versus just up here. Now I want to go just a little bit deeper into the next layer. And if we look at everything that I've described today, the paralysis, the patterns, the survival states, they do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside of identity. The identity of this capable person, the one that can handle it all, the one who figures it out, the one who holds it together. And the thing is that identity was built for a reason. It has kept you safe. It has served you, and you probably wouldn't be where you are without it today. But at some point, and you might be feeling this at this moment in time, that identity stops fitting and it feels like performance. It actually feels like a mask. It feels weighted. And it's essentially a weight that you carry, this mask, versus just you being yourself and inhabiting yourself. And the paralysis that you experience, the inability to make a decision, to move, to act, part of it is nervous system dysregulation. But the other part is your identity that doesn't know how to navigate where you're going next. And that version of you, the one that got you here, is not going to get you there. The one with the high output, the high drive, the high performance. And it's not because you need to necessarily become someone else. It's because you need to let go of the mask and become yourself fully. You need an identity that doesn't require performance to feel valid. One that is grounded enough within themselves to be comfortable within stillness and the unknown. Regulated enough to make decisions with clarity and ease that still hold weight. Spacious enough to be present in your business, your relationships, and most importantly within your life. And that essentially is not just a mindset shift, that is rebuilding and getting deeply curious about who you are and how you wish to leave a legacy in this world moving forward. And that is the most important work that a high performer can do. And if this landed, if this spoke to you and you got a really uncomfortable feeling in your chest, or you felt like, that's me, then you know that this is something important. And as we said before, you don't have an information problem, you don't have a strategy problem or a framework problem, you have a capacity problem. And your capacity isn't built through more content or more podcasts or more books and strategies. It is built through doing the right kind of work, with the right kind of support, with the right amount of depth. If you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. If you want to take a step to have a better understanding of yourself and where you might be leaking capacity and power at this moment in time, take the free quiz in the description below. And if you want to dive deeper, be it you as a person or within your company or your team environment, feel free to click around on the coaching options below. We'll see you in the next video. And as always, you have the ability to make the shift.